You have been lied to, not by one man, not by one institution, but by a culture that teaches you to settle. Settle for mediocrity, for complacency, for a version of success that is hollow and godless. Every day you are being programmed by screens, by voices, by systems that do not care for your soul or your purpose. And the tragedy is most of you don't even know it. If you want to be successful, not in the way the world defines it, with empty applause and fading pleasures, but in the way that leaves a legacy, in the way that honors the gifts you've been given, then you must begin by tearing down the lies. You must renew your mind. You must train yourself to think with clarity, to act with discipline, and to pursue the kind of greatness that isn't fleeting. This isn't about positive thinking. This is about radical transformation. You don't stumble into purpose. You don't accidentally walk into victory. You train, you fight, you reprogram everything that has kept you bound, because if you don't brainwash yourself for success, this world will brainwash you for failure. Now listen closely. Our generation has been fed lies so consistently, so subtly that we no longer question them. They come dressed in entertainment, cloaked in ambition, and disguised as wisdom. We've been told that comfort is the highest goal, that success is found in wealth and recognition, and that truth is relative. As long as you feel something, it must be right. But what happens when the foundation of your thinking is corrupt? What happens when the very system shaping your desires is designed to enslave you to mediocrity? You must come to terms with the fact that you have been trained by this world not to think deeply, not to challenge norms, but to conform. This deception doesn't always come through outright rebellion. Sometimes it arrives through compromise. You hear it in phrases like follow your heart, do what makes you happy, or live your truth. These sound pleasant, they sound liberating, but they are rooted in a lie that places self above discipline, emotion above truth, and comfort above character. The culture teaches you to prioritize feelings over faithfulness, popularity over purpose, and instant gratification over long-term growth. That's not just misguided, it's deadly to your destiny. You have to understand something. Everything around you is shaping you. Every scroll, every advertisement, every voice that speaks into your mind is forming your values, whether you realize it or not. That's why this point is so critical. You cannot brainwash yourself for success until you first tear down the false narratives you've unknowingly built your life on. These lies have infiltrated not just your mind, but your habits, your choices, and your identity. You think you're choosing freely, but your decisions are rooted in scripts that someone else wrote for you. Look at how easily we accept limitations. You tell yourself, I'm just not disciplined, or that's just how I am, or I can't change. Where did you learn to think so small? Who convinced you that you were destined for failure or stuck in your patterns forever? These are not facts. They're strongholds. And strongholds don't come down by being passive. They come down by violence, by the violent renewal of the mind, by exposing every lie with truth and refusing to let culture define what's possible for your life. Some of you are still living under the weight of words spoken over you by broken people, teachers, parents, peers, people who had no right to define your worth. And now you carry those lies like labels: lazy, stupid, not enough. You live down to expectations that were never meant to define you. But here's the thing. Those voices only have power because you believed them. You let them sit in your soul unchallenged. And as long as you leave them there, they'll direct your path, even when you think you're in control. Deconstructing these lies isn't comfortable. It's not fun. It's not trendy, but it is necessary. Because until you identify the roots of your thinking, you cannot plant anything new. You cannot build a life of true success on a foundation of deception. You must go deep. You must ask hard questions. You must face the pain of what you've accepted as truth. Only then can you begin the real process of transformation. This is not about blaming society or playing the victim. This is about owning your mind, taking back what was stolen from you, and refusing to let the world do your thinking for you any longer. Because if the world is shaping your mind, it is also shaping your future. And I promise you, this world doesn't care if you fulfill your purpose. It wants you distracted, entertained, addicted, passive, comfortable, but you weren't created to be comfortable. You were created to conquer. So the first step towards success, real success, is not to add more goals or make more plans. It is to tear down the lies you've been living under, every single one of them. And when the rubble settles, you'll finally have space to build something real, something that lasts. But it starts with this question: what lie have I believed that is still controlling my life? The mind is not neutral. It is not some passive instrument that merely records experiences and observations. No, the mind is a battlefield, constantly being shaped, molded, and influenced by what you feed it. You are either programming it intentionally, or it is being programmed by everything else around you. The music you listen to, the books you read or don't read, the voices you allow to speak into your life, the videos you scroll through mindlessly. All of it is shaping your thoughts, beliefs, and ultimately your future. That's why reprogramming the mind isn't optional. It is essential. If you want to succeed in any area of life, spiritually, emotionally, financially, you must take control of the internal dialogue, the patterns of thought, and the habits of belief that live within you. Now, most people go through life unaware of how much mental baggage they carry. Their thoughts are not their own, they're inherited. From childhood, they've absorbed limiting beliefs, toxic patterns, fears, and insecurities that never originated from within. They were passed down from broken environments, flawed authorities, and cultural conditioning. And now those same thoughts are running their lives, quietly, consistently, and destructively. That's why transformation begins in the mind. You cannot walk into success with the same thinking that kept you in bondage. It's not enough to reject the lie. You must replace it with truth. That's the essence of mental reprogramming. If you pull out a weed and leave the soil empty, something worse will grow in its place. The same applies to your thoughts. Once you identify what doesn't serve you, thoughts of fear, worthlessness, laziness, or victimhood, you must immediately replace them with truth, with vision, with conviction. This isn't a one-time event. It is a daily discipline. You must train your mind like a soldier trains for war, because that's exactly what this is. A war for your focus, your identity, your destiny. Many people want success, but they are not willing to change the way they think. They keep trying to reach new levels while dragging old thought patterns with them. You can't build a new life with the same broken blueprints. You need a new mindset, one that is rooted in discipline, clarity, and truth. That means speaking life when you feel empty. That means pushing forward even when your mind screams to quit. That means choosing thoughts that align with your purpose, not your feelings. Your mind is a garden. Whatever you plant, you will eventually harvest. If you sow negativity, doubt, and laziness, don't be surprised when your life is filled with frustration, excuses, and failure. But if you begin to sow discipline, truth, and gratitude, if you speak vision over your life, even when your circumstances haven't changed yet, something begins to shift. Slowly at first, but consistently. Your reality begins to rise to the level of your thinking. That's why people who succeed are often not the most talented, but the most trained. They've trained their minds to see opportunity instead of fear, to act instead of wait, to persist instead of fold. You can't always control your environment, but you can control your focus. You can choose what you allow to dominate your thoughts. That's the power of mental reprogramming. It puts you back in the driver's seat. It refuses to let circumstances dictate your identity. It arms you with a vision that's stronger than your excuses. But make no mistake, this isn't easy. It takes repetition. It takes intention. It takes showing up every single day and choosing to believe something better, even before you see it. Because belief always comes before breakthrough. That's the cost of success. You don't get it by default, you get it by design, by shaping your inner world until it produces fruit in your outer world. So if you truly want to rise, stop trying to change everything out there and start changing what's in here. Because when your mind changes, your life follows. And until you take that power seriously, you'll keep waiting for something outside of you to do what only transformation inside of you can accomplish. Success has never belonged to the most emotional, but to the most disciplined. Emotions are real, yes. They're loud, they're strong, and they often feel urgent. But they're also fleeting. They can't be trusted to lead. One day you feel inspired, the next day you feel overwhelmed. One moment you're ready to conquer the world, the next you want to crawl back into bed. If your life is built on the foundation of your feelings, then your destiny is being decided by a storm. And storms come and go. But discipline, that's the anchor. That's the unshakable resolve that keeps you grounded when everything around you and even inside you feels chaotic. Discipline is what moves you forward when your emotions have nothing left to offer. It's the decision to act, not because you feel like it, but because it's right. Because it's necessary, because your future depends on it. And that kind of mindset doesn't come naturally. It must be forged. It must be built through repetition, through hard choices, and through a deep understanding that your feelings are servants, not masters. Emotions can inform you, but they should never govern you. Too many people quit simply because they don't feel motivated anymore. They started strong, fueled by excitement and adrenaline, but the moment things got hard or boring or painful, they stopped. They assumed the absence of emotion meant the absence of purpose. But the truth is, purpose lives beyond emotion. Purpose is what remains when the fire dies out and all you have left is a cold room and a clock ticking. That's where discipline begins. That's where transformation begins. Discipline says, I don't care how I feel. I'm going to do what needs to be done. It doesn't wait for convenience. It doesn't seek permission. It doesn't negotiate with weakness. It simply acts. And every time you choose discipline over emotion, you build strength. You build integrity. You become the kind of person who is consistent in a world addicted to comfort and inconsistency. And let me tell you, that kind of person is rare, but that kind of person changes the world. When you make discipline your default, you start to realize how much time you've wasted being ruled by feelings. You begin to see how many opportunities were lost, not because you were incapable, but because you waited to feel ready. The people who succeed in life aren't necessarily the most gifted. They're just the ones who didn't quit. They showed up when it was hard. They worked when it was boring. They stayed committed when everything inside them screamed to run. That's what separates the great from the average. Discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't get applause. It doesn't trend. But it builds legacy. It builds endurance. It teaches you to rely on something deeper than hype. And that's when the shift happens. When you stop being reactive and start being intentional. When you stop chasing motivation and start becoming the kind of person who can thrive without it. But don't misunderstand, this isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about putting them in their proper place. Your emotions are like children in the back seat of the car. You can't throw them out, but you also don't let them drive. You acknowledge them, you learn from them, but you don't let them steer your life. That's the difference between the immature and the mature, between the stagnant and the successful. Every day, you have a choice to let your emotions decide your actions or to let your discipline shape your destiny. That's the choice you make when the alarm goes off, when the opportunity looks too big, when the criticism hits too hard. Will you be driven by how you feel or by what you know is right? Because success isn't built in the big moments. It's built in the small, invisible decisions, the ones no one sees, the ones you make when no one is watching. So if you want to rise, stop being a slave to how you feel. Take control, develop habits, embrace discomfort, build a life where discipline runs deeper than emotion. Because when your feelings fade, and they will, discipline will still be there, standing tall, ready to carry you forward. And that's where the real power lies. The mind cannot be renewed by accident. It is a deliberate, ongoing process, one that requires both confrontation and replacement. You cannot live a transformed life while thinking in patterns that are rooted in fear, shame, compromise, and limitation. The truth is, the mind is shaped by what you allow into it. If you let the noise of the world dominate your thoughts, then you will live a life that mirrors that chaos. Distracted, anxious, divided. But if you anchor your mind in truth, if you filter every thought through a higher standard, then your life will begin to reflect peace, purpose, and clarity. Renewing the mind is not a motivational slogan. It's not about feeling better. It's about thinking rightly. It's about tearing down every lie that has taken residence in your thought life and replacing it with truth that endures. That truth may not always feel good, but it will set you free. It will correct you. It will discipline you. And in the end, it will make you strong, not just emotionally, but spiritually and mentally. There is a reason why so many people feel stuck. They're trying to live a new life with an old mind. They're chasing growth, but holding on to thought patterns that sabotage them. You cannot think like a victim and expect to walk in victory. You cannot entertain mediocrity and expect to experience greatness. That's the contradiction too many people live in. They want change without changing the way they think. They want transformation without truth. But real change doesn't start in your circumstances, it starts in your mind. You must train your thoughts the way an athlete trains their body. That means discipline, that means focus, that means repetition. Every single day, you must examine what you believe about yourself, about the world, and about what is possible. And if that belief doesn't align with truth, with excellence, with purpose, you reject it. You do not negotiate with lies. You do not make excuses for small thinking. You call it what it is, and you replace it with something greater. Too many people are trying to solve external problems while ignoring the internal war. But what's the use of a breakthrough in your career or relationships if your mind is still bound by anxiety, fear, or pride? What good is progress if your thoughts are still polluted with insecurity and self-doubt? Renewal of the mind is not an accessory to success. It is the foundation. It is the very soil from which every decision, every action, and every habit grows. And let's be honest, renewing your mind is hard. It takes work. It takes intentional time and reflection, in truth, in silence. It takes cutting off influences that distract you or distort your values. You can't fill your mind with garbage and expect clarity. You can't feed on lies and expect to live in truth. That's not how it works. You are not immune to the voices you listen to, the content you consume, the environments you entertain. You are always being shaped, whether you realize it or not. The question is, are you choosing what shapes you? You must saturate your mind with things that strengthen you, words that convict, teachings that challenge, thoughts that elevate. You must build your inner world with care, because eventually your outer world will follow. If your mind is clear, focused, rooted in truth, you will be able to stand in storms that would have crushed you before. You will have peace when others panic. You will have direction when others are lost. Why? Because you've renewed your mind. You've exchanged emotion for conviction, confusion for clarity, lies for truth. This isn't a one-time event. It's not something you do once and forget. It's daily, sometimes hourly. You will have to fight to stay focused. You will have to constantly guard your mind against negativity, comparison, and distraction. But if you do, if you truly commit to renewing your mind, everything changes. Your decisions become wiser. Your habits become sharper. Your vision becomes clearer. And most importantly, your identity becomes unshakable. You stop being a product of the world around you and start becoming a reflection of the truth within you. And that's the key, because when your mind is renewed, your life is no longer dictated by chance. It is driven by purpose. And purpose is stronger than any obstacle you'll ever face. There is a dangerous illusion that many people live under, the idea that they have time. Time to waste, time to delay, time to get serious someday. But someday is not a promise, it's a myth. The truth is, you don't know how much time you have. And until you begin to live with urgency, purpose-driven urgency, you will continue to drift through life, half awake, chasing distractions while the clock keeps ticking. Purpose without urgency is like fire without oxygen, powerful in theory, but useless in practice. If you know what you're called to do, but you don't act on it, you're no better off than the person who has no purpose at all. Because knowing your calling doesn't change your life, obeying it does. You must begin to treat your life like it matters, because it does. You're not here to just exist. You're not here to blend in, to survive, to coast. You were created with a reason, a mission, a unique combination of gifts, burdens, and experiences that no one else has. But if you don't live like that matters, if you don't fight every day to align your life with that truth, then you're wasting the most sacred thing you've been given, your assignment. And there is no guarantee that opportunity will always be there waiting for you. Doors close. Time passes. Hearts grow cold. If you don't move when you're called to move, you may miss the very window that was designed for your breakthrough. Living with purpose-driven urgency doesn't mean living in panic or chaos. It means living with clarity. It means waking up with intention, moving through your day with direction, and refusing to be pulled in every direction by distractions, excuses, or the opinions of others. When you're driven by purpose, you stop chasing what's popular and start chasing what's necessary. You stop asking, what do I feel like doing? And start asking, what has to be done? That shift changes everything. It creates discipline. It breeds consistency. It produces results. Urgency also protects you from passivity. It breaks the lie that you can delay obedience. Some people are waiting for the perfect moment to start the business, the ministry, the healing, the growth. But there is no perfect moment. There is only now. You must start before you're ready, move before it makes sense, and trust that clarity comes in motion, not in waiting. Purpose reveals itself through obedience, not through endless contemplation. Every day you delay is a day you cannot get back. You're either building or you're losing ground. There is no neutral in the pursuit of purpose. There is also a cost to ignoring urgency. The cost is regret. The cost is wasted years. The cost is looking back and realizing you let fear, laziness, or comfort rob you of what could have been. Too many people die with their purpose still buried inside them, not because they didn't have time, but because they didn't take it seriously. They thought they had forever. They thought they could start later. But time is not merciful. It moves on with or without you. And one day you will either be grateful you moved when it was hard, or broken because you didn't. Purpose-driven urgency requires you to reject the average mindset. You can't think like everyone else. You can't move like everyone else. Most people waste time. Most people scroll endlessly, live distracted, and move without direction. But you were not called to be most people. You were called to be effective, to make impact, to shake the ground you walk on. And you can't do that living slow, passive, or careless. You must be intentional. Every word you speak, every hour you spend, every step you take, because one day you will give an account for what you did with your life. And on that day, excuses won't matter. Only obedience. So ask yourself, are you living like your purpose matters? Are you treating your time as sacred? Are you moving like someone who knows that lives are connected to your obedience? Because they are. Your purpose is not just about you. It's about who you are called to serve, who you are called to lead, who you are called to inspire. And if you stay silent, if you stay still, they suffer. This is the urgency we need, not rooted in fear, but in purpose, not in stress, but in calling. This is the fire that keeps you moving when motivation fades. This is the reason you rise early, push through pain, and refuse to quit, because you know the clock is ticking, and what you've been called to do is too important to wait. You have one life, one shot, one story to write with the breath you've been given. And the tragedy would not be in failing, it would be in never trying and never stepping fully into who you were meant to become, because you let fear, emotion, and distraction rob you of your potential. The mind, if left undisciplined, will keep you in chains. But the moment you take responsibility for your thoughts, your habits, your daily choices, that's the moment everything begins to change. You must reprogram your thinking. You must stop waiting to feel ready and start acting on what you know is right. You must train your discipline to be stronger than your moods. You must fight for a renewed mind, one that reflects truth, not lies, purpose, not confusion. And above all, you must move with urgency because the clock is ticking and your purpose cannot wait. You were not made for mediocrity. You were not made to blend in, to coast, or to barely make it. You were made for impact, for excellence, for victory. But none of that happens by accident. It happens by choice, by ownership, by daily obedience. So rise up, take control of your mind, align your life with your calling, and live like it matters. Because it does.